There are places in this world where time seems to stop, where shadows move on their own, where silence speaks louder than screams. Places abandoned by the living, but not by the dead. You've heard the legends. You've seen the headlines. But what lies beneath the surface is far darker than any story ever told. From cursed forests that swallow those who enter, to haunted islands draped in dolls, death, and despair. These are not just creepy locations. They are gateways into the unknown. Some say visiting these places invites something back with you. Others never get the chance to tell their story at all. We take you on a spine-chilling journey through the top 10 creepiest places on Earth, where terror is real, legends walk, and every shadow might just be watching you. So grab your headphones, dim your lights, and prepare yourself. Because once you enter these stories, you don't come out the same. Before we descend into the first terrifying location, make sure to smash that subscribe so you don't miss the next dark story. Like this video if you're brave enough to keep watching. Comment below. Which of these places would you never visit, and why? Share this with someone who thinks ghosts aren't real. Save this video to revisit when you're feeling brave or foolish enough to dive back in. Let's begin. There's a place at the base of Japan's iconic Mount Fuji that most tourists don't talk about. A place so silent, so unnaturally still, that even the birds don't dare to sing. They call it Aokigahara, but the world knows it by another name. The Suicide Forest. A forest so dense it swallows the sunlight. A place where compasses spin wildly, where people disappear, and where the weight of sorrow hangs in the air like fog. But what truly lies in its depths? Spirits? Demons? Or something far more terrifying, human despair? Stay with me because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about life and death. Aokigahara is a 14-square-mile forest at the northwest base of Mount Fuji. From above, it looks like a sea of green. But inside, it's a labyrinth of twisted trees, sharp volcanic rock, and haunting silence. The forest floor is made of porous lava from the eruption of Mount Fuji over 1,000 years ago. The roots of the trees snake across the ground like veins, and there are few signs of animal life. It's not just silent, it's dead silent. The unique geography absorbs sound, creating an overwhelming, suffocating quiet. People say once you step inside, it feels like the forest swallows you whole. Trails quickly vanish. There are no landmarks. If you step off the path, you might never find your way back. That's why search teams constantly find colored tape tied to trees, breadcrumbs left by those who intend to find their way out, or by those who want to be found. The darkness of Aokigahara runs deeper than the trees. Its history is rooted in death. Centuries ago, it was said to be a place of ubasut, the ancient practice of carrying the elderly into the wilderness and leaving them to die. Whether myth or truth, the stories linger. Locals believed spirits of the abandoned, angry, and lost still haunt the woods. In Japanese folklore, Aokigahara is said to be haunted by yur, restless spirits who suffered violent or tragic deaths. These ghosts are not just sad, they are vengeful. Pale, with white funeral robes and long black hair, they're known to wail in the dark, luring the living to join them. And then there are the darker tales of shadows that follow hikers, of whispers in the trees, and figures glimpsed just out of the corner of your eye. Aokigahara is most infamous for one thing: suicide. It's become one of the most popular suicide destinations in the world. Authorities stopped releasing official numbers, but reports estimate dozens of bodies are recovered every year, and many more are never found. At the forest entrance, a chilling sign greets visitors. It reads, "Your life is a precious gift from your parents. Think of your family. Don't suffer alone, and please consult with someone." Below it, there's a suicide prevention hotline. It's not just a suggestion, it's a desperate plea. Some come with a plan. They leave notes on trees. Others bring tents and stay for days, unsure if they'll live or die. Rescue volunteers regularly patrol, calling out into the trees, "Are you okay? Please talk to us." But many never respond. Japanese police, out of respect, tie a piece of white cloth to trees where bodies were found. If you wander deep enough, you might see one fluttering in the wind and know that someone died there. Let me tell you about some true stories from the forest. These are not legends. These are from hikers, search volunteers, and explorers who dared to go in. The Whispering Tent. A YouTuber entered the forest to document its infamy. Hours in, he found a blue tent, zipped shut deep in the woods. As he approached, he heard soft whispering inside. He called out, but no one responded. He opened the flap. It was empty. No tracks, no signs of recent activity, just a strange, freezing cold inside the tent. He turned to leave and thought he heard his name whispered behind him. The Tide Path. One hiker found a red ribbon tied to tree after tree, leading deeper into the woods. He followed it out of curiosity. 2 hours in, it ended abruptly tied around a small bundle. It was a wallet, ID, and a letter. The letter said, "I got lost in the darkness. I'm sorry." He called authorities. A search team later found a body just 20 feet away, hidden behind a tree. The floating figure. A volunteer once described seeing what he thought was a woman hanging from a tree in the distance. He called for backup. When they arrived, there was no body, but the branch was bent, as if something had recently been hanging from it. The screams at night. Campers who dared to stay overnight often report screams echoing through the forest, especially just before dawn. Not animal screams, human ones. Some so blood-curdling they leave people frozen. Others wake to find footprints around their tents but no one nearby. Despite its dark reputation, Aokigahara has become a destination for thrill seekers, ghost hunters, and YouTubers. Some go in to make horror content, others just to explore. But most agree, it's not a place to take lightly. Authorities have tried to reduce the stigma. Some paths are now labeled with positive signs. Mental health campaigns are in place. But still, the forest draws those on the brink. Many Japanese people still believe that the forest is cursed, that it carries the energy of all who died there, that if you enter in a moment of weakness, the forest will keep you. So what makes Aokigahara so terrifying? It's not just the deaths, it's the atmosphere, the density of the trees, the way GPS and compasses stop working, the sheer isolation. Even in 2025, it's easy to get completely lost. And then there's the psychological aspect. People enter the forest already carrying pain, depression, hopelessness. The silence amplifies it. The darkness feeds it. Some say the forest speaks to you. It makes you question your worth. It drains your hope. Others say it doesn't just take people who want to die. It makes people want to die. There's a serious ethical debate surrounding Aokigahara. Some believe we should leave it alone. Others believe it should be shut off completely. The problem is, people are still drawn to it. And in an age of social media, many exploit it for clicks and views. But this isn't entertainment. It's real pain, real death. Volunteers and mental health workers plead with the world. Don't glorify it. Don't romanticize it. Don't make a spectacle of suffering. Aokigahara is more than a haunted forest. It's a mirror, a reflection of the parts of humanity we try to ignore. Pain, isolation, the quiet desperation behind a smile. If you ever find yourself drawn to its silence, ask yourself why. And if someone you know seems lost in their own forest, reach out. Be their path back. Because sometimes the scariest place isn't a forest at all, it's the darkness within.
Subscribe before the shadows notice you're still here. Comment if you dare.
Deep in the heart of Mexico, hidden among the winding canals of Xochimilco, lies an island unlike any other on Earth. It's not on most tourist brochures. Locals speak of it in hushed tones, and those who visit often leave changed. It is a place where silence screams, where lifeless eyes follow you, and where the air hangs heavy with sorrow and secrets. This is no ordinary island. This is the Isla de las Muñecas, the island of the dolls. What began as a man's quiet obsession has become one of the most disturbing and terrifying places in the world. A haunted shrine to a dead girl filled with hundreds, perhaps thousands, of mutilated, decaying dolls strung from trees, nailed to walls, and hanging from wires like rotting guardians of a forgotten tragedy. But why are they there? And what happens when the sun goes down? You might think this is just urban legend until you go there yourself. The island of the dolls is nestled within the ancient canals of Xochimilco, just south of Mexico City. The area itself is a remnant of a vast Aztec waterway system, and these canals have carried centuries of history, culture, and death. To get to the island, you have to take a trajinera, a traditional flat-bottomed boat. The ride is deceptively peaceful. Mariachi bands pass by. Families celebrate on nearby boats. But as you drift closer to the island, the mood shifts. The laughter fades. The wind dies down, and the dolls come into view. They are everywhere, hanging from tree branches, impaled on fences, nailed to buildings, dolls missing eyes, arms, heads, dolls covered in moss, mold, spider webs. Some look like they're weeping, others seem frozen in screams, and no matter where you stand, some of them seem to be watching. Always watching. The legend of the island begins with a man named Don Julian Santana Barrera. In the 1950s, Don Julian left his wife and family to live in solitude on this island. Why? No one truly knows. But it was there that he claimed to have found something chilling: the body of a young girl drowned in the canal. Soon after, he found a doll floating in the water, perhaps belonging to the girl. As a sign of respect, or perhaps guilt, Don Julian hung the doll on a tree. But then he started hearing whispers, footsteps, cries in the night. He believed the girl's spirit was still there, angry, alone. And so, he began collecting dolls. He would scour the canals, pulling them from the water. He would trade produce with locals to get more. Over decades, the collection grew into an obsession. He believed the dolls kept the spirit of the girl at peace, or kept something darker at bay. But the dolls didn't bring peace. They brought something else. Visitors started reporting strange occurrences. The sound of small footsteps in the dark. Dolls that moved when no one was looking. Voices calling from the water. For decades, Don Julian lived alone with his dolls. But in 2001, something chilling happened. Don Julian was found dead in the exact same spot where he claimed the little girl had drowned. Many believe it was no accident. They say the spirits finally took him. Others believe he went mad, consumed by the very obsession he thought was protecting him. But what if it was something else entirely? After his death, the island was turned into a sort of macabre shrine, and the dolls remained, slowly decaying, yet somehow still watching, still whispering, still waiting. True encounters. The tour guide's story. One local guide, Alejandro, tells of a time he brought tourists just before dusk. As they explored, one doll began to turn its head slowly, though there was no wind. Another doll hanging. High from a tree fell at their feet. When Alejandro picked it up, its eyes were bleeding a black liquid. The tourists screamed. He never took a group that late again. The journalist encounter. A Mexican journalist visited the island to write a skeptical piece. She spent the night alone, recording her experience. Around 3 a.m., she heard giggling. Then a splash. She found wet footprints leading from the canal to the center of the island. She left the next morning, white as a ghost, and never published the article. 3. The child's doll returned. A family brought a new doll to the island as an offering. Their daughter placed it at the base of a tree. But just as they were leaving, the doll was gone. Later, they found it nailed to a tree, its face slashed, with a note in a child's handwriting. "You forgot me." The screaming at night. Boatmen have refused to take people past the island at night. They speak of hearing screams. Not human, not animal, something in between. They say dolls appear in boats that pass too close. Some even claim to have been scratched. One boatman went missing for 2 days, then returned unable to speak, his eyes wide in terror. The fear of the island of the dolls doesn't come from what you see. It comes from what you feel. The weight in your chest, the static in the air, the feeling that you're not alone even when you are. Some visitors report sudden mood swings, overwhelming sadness, nausea. Some hear whispers in their native language. Others feel like they're being watched by something that hates them. The dolls themselves have grown grotesque. Eyes eaten out by insects, faces cracked and sagging. Some appear to smile, others frown. Some look alive. And they're everywhere, even under the floorboards, even in the trees above. Today, the island is a dark tourist attraction. People visit out of curiosity, thrill, or to pay respects. Some bring dolls. Others try to take them. That is a mistake. Locals warn, never take a doll from the island. Those who do often face strange misfortunes, accidents, illness, nightmares. One tourist returned home with a doll as a souvenir. Days later, his house caught fire. He survived, but everything burned except the doll. Another visitor mocked the dolls, took selfies, and laughed. On his way back, his boat tipped over in calm water. He swore something pulled him under. He survived, but his camera was gone. Weeks later, his photos reappeared online, posted from an unknown account. Experts believe the island taps into deep psychological fears, the uncanny valley of human-like dolls, the isolation, the legend of a drowned child. Some believe it's a place where collective trauma lingers. Others say it's a psychic sponge, absorbing pain from every visitor, every death, every offering. Even skeptics admit there's something off about the place. Rational minds can't explain how so many people feel the exact same thing when they step onto the island. A crushing sense of dread. The island of the dolls is not just a place. It's an experience, a warning, a mirror into the deepest corners of human fear and guilt. It stands as a shrine to a lost girl, to a man who tried to save her soul, and to the idea that some places never forget. So the next time you see an old doll in your attic, staring blankly through a crack in the wall, ask yourself, what if it's watching? What if it remembers? And if you ever find yourself drifting through the canals of Xochimilco and you see an island of lifeless eyes watching, from the trees turn back, because some stories aren't meant to be touched. You've made it this far, which means the darkness hasn't scared you away yet. But be careful. Not everything that watches you here wants you to leave. Subscribe now, so the next time we descend into the shadows, you'll be ready. There is an island off the coast of Venice, Italy, that no tour guide will recommend. An island so shrouded in death, madness, and legend that even locals dare not speak its name aloud. They call it Poveglia, the Plague Island. From the surface, it appears peaceful. Birds circling, trees swaying, but beneath its foliage and crumbling ruins lie the ashes of over 160,000 souls. The soil is mixed with the remnants of plague victims. The air still hums with the echoes of pain, madness, and fire. This is not just a ghost story. It is a place history tried to erase, and tonight, you and I are going to explore it. We will walk its haunted paths, unearth the horrors of its past, and hear the cries of those who came and never truly left. To understand Poveglia, we must return to the darkest time in European history, the year 1348. The Black Death, the bubonic plague, was spreading like wildfire. Venice, being a major port city, was particularly vulnerable. The Venetian government, desperate to stop the infection, turned to radical, ruthless measures. One of those measures was isolation. They needed a place to send the sick, a place where the dying could be separated from the living. That place was Poveglia. At first, it served as a quarantine checkpoint. Ships suspected of harboring the infected were stopped. The sick were dragged off and sent to Poveglia. But it didn't take long for it to become a dumping ground. People were thrown onto the island whether they were infected or not. Whole families, children, the elderly. There was no medical care, no food, no water, just waiting for death. Mass graves were dug. Some people were buried alive. Others burned in great pyres. The island became a furnace of death. The smoke could be seen from Venice, and to this day, they say over 50% of the soil is human ash. But the horror didn't stop in 1348. The plague returned again and again, and each time it did, Poveglia was reactivated. By the 1600s, it was fully functioning as a lazaretto, a plague hospital. Ships sailed directly there, offloading their infected cargo. But there were too many bodies, too much death. The staff, overwhelmed and terrified, began burning the corpses without documentation. Thousands vanished without names. Eyewitness accounts describe people screaming as they were tossed onto the fires alive, mistaken for dead. Some tried to swim away only to be shot. Others went mad from isolation. The island became a nightmare factory. The smoke of burning flesh was constant. The wind carried the stench of decay across the lagoon. The island was no longer a place of healing. It was a machine for mass death. In 1922, after years of abandonment, the island was given a new purpose, a psychiatric hospital, a place to send those society had given up on. But the island had not forgotten its past. Almost immediately, patients began reporting strange phenomena. They saw figures watching them from the windows, heard whispers in their ears, felt hands grabbing them in the dark. The doctors dismissed these claims as hallucinations, symptoms of mental illness, but then the staff began hearing them too. The most chilling tale is that of a doctor who worked in the bell tower. He began performing brutal experiments on the patients, crude lobotomies with no anesthesia. He claimed he was curing them, but witnesses say they could hear the screams from across the lagoon. And then one night, the doctor snapped. He ran to the top of the bell tower and jumped to his death. Some say he was pushed by the spirits of his victims. Others claim he survived the fall, only to be consumed by a black mist that rose from the ground. His body was never found. After the asylum shut down in 1968, the island was completely abandoned. But that doesn't mean it was silent. Fishermen refuse to cast their nets near the island. Those who do often pull up fragments of bone, human teeth, fingers. No birds nest there, no animals roam. The vegetation is sickly and twisted. And yet visitors describe an overwhelming feeling of being watched. One explorer reported hearing a child's voice whispering, "Why are you here?" Another claimed to see shadowy figures darting through the trees, only to vanish into thin air. The island doesn't want visitors. It doesn't want to be disturbed. And it makes that very clear. Over the years, dozens of thrill seekers have risked everything to step foot on Poveglia. Some came for answers, others came for YouTube fame. Most came back changed. A British group of ghost hunters stayed one night. One of them went missing for hours. When they found him, he was curled into a ball, covered in scratches, muttering, "They're in the ground. They're watching." Another visitor recorded audio and later found a voice whispering, "We burn still." A paranormal researcher from the US claimed to have been pushed down the stairs by invisible hands. He suffered a concussion, and there are countless stories of cameras malfunctioning, batteries draining instantly, and equipment refusing to work. But the most chilling are those who went and never spoke of it again. The bell tower still stands, weathered and crooked like a scar in the sky. The bell was removed long ago, but locals swear they still hear it. Late at night, the sound of a single chime drifts across the lagoon. Always at 3 a.m. Always followed by silence. Some say it's the doctor, still calling out. Others believe it's a warning. The tower is believed to be the spiritual heart of the island. Paranormal. Researchers call it the vortex. One man attempted to camp at its base. In the morning, he was gone. All they found was a blood-stained journal with a single sentence scrawled over and over, "The fire never ends." In 2014, the Italian government tried to auction off the island to private investors. A wealthy businessman bought the lease. He planned to build a luxury hotel. He spent one night on the island. By morning, he pulled out of the deal. He has never spoken publicly about what happened. Rumors swirled. He was said to have seen a woman in plague robes walking across the water. Since then, every attempt to renovate or sell the island has failed. Builders refuse to work there. Equipment mysteriously breaks. Today, the government guards it. No one is allowed in, not officially, but sometimes you can still see lights flickering from the buildings, even though there's no electricity. So what gives Poveglia its terrible power? Some believe it's a place where the veil between life and death is thin, a liminal zone soaked in centuries of trauma. Others think the sheer number of deaths has created a kind of psychic residue, a permanent scar in the Earth's energy. The pain is so dense it has taken shape, sound, sight, touch. There are no demons here, no monsters, just echoes. Echoes of screams, fire, madness, and rot. And those echoes never fade. Poveglia Island is not just haunted, it is cursed. It has been a quarantine zone, a mass grave, an asylum, and now a tomb of silence. The wind speaks in tongues. The shadows whisper. And somewhere, beneath the surface, the dead still wait. So if you ever visit Venice, and you catch sight of a small island covered in fog, look away. Some places were never meant to be touched. Some stories should remain buried, and some ghosts are still watching. If your heart is racing right now, good. That means you're alive. But the story isn't over yet. And the deeper we go, the darker it becomes. Hit subscribe now so you won't miss what waits beyond this point. Because the real horror, it's only just beginning. There's a place where time stopped at exactly 1:23 a.m., April 26, 1986. A place where children's toys still lie scattered on classroom floors, dinner plates still rest on dusty tables, and the Ferris wheel has never turned. A place where silence screams louder than words, and the wind carries whispers of lives abruptly halted. Welcome to Pripyat, the ghost city of Chernobyl. Before it became a symbol of disaster, Pripyat was a symbol of progress. Founded in 1970, it was a model city, purpose-built to house the brightest engineers and workers of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. It was youthful, energetic. With over 49,000 residents, the average age was just 26. There were schools, hospitals, restaurants, sports complexes. The crown jewel? A beautiful amusement park complete with bumper cars and a towering yellow Ferris wheel, scheduled to open on May 1st, 1986. The future seemed unstoppable, but that illusion would evaporate in a blinding flash. Alarming tone, wind howling, a low, ominous hum grows. April 26, 1986. Reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded. The sky lit up with blue fire. A radioactive cloud surged upward, showering the city in silent death. Yet in Pripyat, all was calm. People slept. Children dreamed. They didn't know their world had just ended. The next morning, residents noticed black ash falling from the sky. Some children played in it like snow. Others watched emergency vehicles speed toward the plant. But there were no alarms, no warnings. It wasn't until 36 hours later that the evacuation began. More than 200 buses arrived, and a chilling announcement was made. This is a temporary evacuation. You will return in 3 days. Bring only essentials. No one ever returned. The buses left, and Pripyat was abandoned, food left uneaten, clothes still drying on balconies, music tapes frozen mid-song. For years, the city sat untouched, a perfect time capsule of Soviet life. But nature doesn't wait. The forest began to consume it. Ivy wrapped around light poles. Trees broke through concrete. Wolves, wild dogs, and mutated animals roamed freely. But the most haunting thing wasn't the overgrowth. It was the silence, and in that silence came the stories. Visitors brave enough to enter Pripyat often speak of unexplainable encounters. A soft child's laughter echoing from an empty school. Shadows moving just out of frame. Lights flickering in buildings that have had no electricity for decades. One photographer claimed he saw a girl in a white dress staring out from the 3rd floor of a crumbling apartment. When he climbed the stairs, there was no one, just a child's shoe and a mirror cracked in the shape of a star. Paranormal investigators have reported disturbing EMF spikes and even faint voices recorded in abandoned hospitals, begging for help, repeating "Mama," or screaming the word "Goryu," which means "I'm burning" in Russian. Some believe these are imprints, echoes left by the souls who died too suddenly to move on. Just outside the city is the infamous Red Forest, where radiation was so intense that trees instantly turned orange and died. The forest is still considered one of the most radioactive places on Earth. Entering without proper protection is suicide. But even worse, strange creatures have been spotted there. Some say mutated wolves with glowing eyes. Others report birds falling from the sky mid-flight. And then there's the silence, a thick, heavy, unnatural quiet that swallows sound. Many who enter the Red Forest say it feels like being watched, hunted, followed. No one stays long. In the center of Pripyat lies a haunting image, the amusement park. Bumper cars frozen in place, rusted, silent. The Ferris wheel, tall and unmoving, still towers above. It was never used. Some say it was briefly activated after the explosion, to distract children before evacuation. But there are no photos, only stories. Yet visitors claim to hear it, the faint creak of metal, the turn of a wheel, the echo of joy turned tragedy. Paranormal teams have picked up giggles through radio static. A woman once collapsed after hearing what she described as children calling her name in Ukrainian. But she was alone, completely alone. Despite the danger, some returned, not to live but to exploit. Looters raided apartments, ripping copper wires and stealing Soviet relics. Urban explorers, called stalkers, came for the thrill, posting videos and selfies. Some never returned. There are stories of people entering buildings only to vanish. Others come back changed, quiet, paranoid. In 2005, a group of explorers claimed to find a man living alone in one of the schools. He didn't speak, just watched them from a distance. When they returned the next day, all their gear was destroyed and the school windows were shattered from the inside. Authorities dismissed it, but Pripyat doesn't like intruders. While many stories can be explained by trauma, isolation, and radiation poisoning, some things defy science. Instruments failing in perfect weather. GPS maps going blank near. Reactor 4. Psychological breakdowns in visitors after 30 minutes inside certain buildings. Even scientists who study the zone admit to strange phenomena. One physicist claimed that Pripyat has become an energy sink, a place where grief, fear, and memory warp reality. Others speak of a temporal distortion, a sensation that time flows differently inside the city. A woman described entering a room at noon and emerging at dusk, though her watch showed only 10 minutes had passed. No one can explain it, but no one denies it. Today, Pripyat is a decaying museum of Soviet life. Tours are allowed in small groups, but they are strictly controlled, and danger remains very real. Some buildings are too fragile to enter. Radiation hotspots still spike unpredictably. And then there's the feeling. Everyone describes it the same way. Heavy, watching, sad. It's as if the city is breathing. Not alive, but not dead either. A soul trapped between worlds. Waiting. Mourning. Remembering. Pripyat isn't just a ghost town, it's a tomb, a city where thousands lived, laughed, loved, and vanished. Its buildings still stand, its windows still stare, and its streets still whisper to those who dare to enter. Some say it's cursed, others call it sacred, but one thing is certain: you can leave Pripyat, but it never leaves you.
Subscribe before the shadows notice you're still here. Comment if you dare. Mwah.
They call it the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania, a forest so twisted, so unnerving, and so unexplainable that even scientists have come to study its secrets and left more confused than when they arrived. This is Hoia Baciu, a forest on the outskirts of Cluj-Napoca, Romania. But to call it just a forest would be a massive understatement. Hoia Baciu is a place where the natural laws of time, space, and sanity appear to break down. It's a place where trees grow in spirals, shadows fall in impossible directions, and where people go missing, sometimes never to return. But let's not start with theories or speculations. Let's start with the first disappearance. It was 1968. A military technician named Emil Barnea decided to take his girlfriend and 2 friends for a relaxing picnic in the forest. It was a bright summer day. The sun was high, the wind was gentle, and laughter echoed among the trees. Then everything changed. Barnea noticed a strange metallic object hovering silently above the tree line. He took out his camera and snapped what would become one of the clearest UFO photographs in history. The object had no visible engines, no wings, no rotors, just a silent disc-shaped craft floating above them. Minutes later, the air grew heavy. Static electricity ran through their bodies. One of the women fainted. The group fled in terror. Barnea's photograph would be published in Romanian newspapers and later picked up by global UFO researchers. But the government, silent. No explanation, no follow-up, just silence. But the real terror of Hoia Baciu didn't start with UFOs. It began with a child. A young girl, no older than 5, wandered into the forest in the 1960s. Her family searched for her for days. Locals joined in. Police, dogs, no trace. Weeks passed. Then, without warning, the girl emerged from the forest exactly where she had disappeared. But something was wrong. Her clothes were the same, spotless, her skin untouched by weather or time. But her eyes, they were blank. She didn't remember a thing, not a single detail, as if she had been plucked out of time itself. Her fingernails hadn't even grown. Doctors were baffled. She should have been starving, dehydrated, covered in scratches. But she was pristine and silent. Locals began whispering. They already feared the forest, of course. Livestock refused to enter. Dogs barked at the tree line but wouldn't cross it. Electronics failed. Compasses spun. People complained of nausea, headaches, and sudden bouts of anxiety the moment they stepped inside. And then there's the clearing, the infamous dead zone, an almost perfectly circular patch in the center of the forest where nothing grows. No trees, no bushes, just grass. And even that seems unnatural. Scientists have tested the soil. There's no reason for this area to be lifeless. No chemicals, no radiation, no signs of fire or disease. But still, nothing grows. It's in that clearing where most of the encounters happen. One man, an archaeologist, reported seeing faces in the trees. Not figures, faces, staring at him from the bark, from the air, even from the ground. He began to hallucinate, screaming voices in languages he couldn't understand. His equipment, brand new and fully charged, died instantly. And when he fled the forest, he discovered scratch marks all over his arms. Marks he hadn't seen before. Marks that bled. Then there was the case of the Paranormal investigation team from Germany. They came equipped with thermal cameras, EMF detectors, radiation counters, and satellite gear. Within 10 minutes of entering the forest, their GPS stopped working. Their radios screeched with static. The thermal camera showed human-shaped heat signatures, 7 of them, surrounding their camp. But when they looked around, no one was there. Just trees and silence. One of the team members claimed to see a figure, a woman in white, hovering slightly above the ground, drifting toward the clearing. He followed her, alone. He was gone for 3 hours. When he returned, his hands were raw and blistered, as if burned. He had no memory of what happened. But the forest doesn't just trap people, it changes them. A group of university students once held a scientific retreat inside Hoya Baiju. They were skeptics, rational, logical minds. By the second night, they weren't sleeping. Several reported feeling like they were being watched. One girl claimed her name was being whispered from the trees. On the third night, a male student disappeared. He was found at dawn, sitting in the clearing, completely naked and laughing hysterically. His eyes were wide open, pupils dilated, and he was humming a lullaby he said he had never heard before. He had no memory of how he got there. The trees in Hoya Baiju don't help. They twist and spiral in unnatural ways, bending in shapes that seem sculpted rather than grown. Branches curl like serpents, and trunks bow as if under an unseen weight. Some say the forest itself is alive, not metaphorically, but literally. That it watches, that it decides who gets to leave. And then there are the lights. Bright orbs of varying colors, red, blue, green, that hover above the ground, then shoot into the sky without a sound. They've been photographed, filmed, chased, but never caught. Some believe they're spirits, others think they're alien in nature. Some even say they're time distortions, brief windows into another dimension or another time entirely. A tourist once followed one of the lights, convinced it was a drone. When he came back, he was sobbing. He claimed to have seen his own funeral in a vision, every detail, including the coffin, the priest, even the weather. 2 years later, it came true, down to the last second. Locals have legends, old ones. They say the forest was cursed centuries ago, that it's a gateway, a thin place, a door between worlds. Some say the spirits of plague victims wander among the trees. Others claim witches still hold rituals there. Animal bones have been found in strange patterns, symbols carved into trees. Sounds that resemble chanting have been recorded, low, rhythmic, and in languages no one recognizes. A woman once entered the forest to confront her fear. She was a journalist, doing a piece on Romanian myths. She brought a camera crew. They lasted 6 hours. At some point, they became separated. The footage, recovered later, shows her screaming at someone or something not on camera. She ran for over 1 kilometer, breathing hard, yelling for help. Then the camera drops, static. When they found her, she was 10 kilometers away, barefoot, her feet bleeding. She didn't remember leaving the camp. Her hair had turned partially gray. And what about the sound? Hoia Baciu is quiet, too quiet. Birds avoid it. Insects vanish. It's unnaturally still. But sometimes, just sometimes, there are sounds, whispers, breathing, footsteps that don't match your own, voices calling your name, but no one else is around. A police officer, skeptical of the rumors, once tried to debunk the forest's reputation. He spent the night alone with only a flashlight and a recorder. In the morning, they found him unconscious near the clearing, with third-degree burns on his back. The tape? It recorded 2 hours of nothing, then faint whispering, and then a scream, his scream, followed by silence. Time behaves strangely here. Watches stop. Phones reset. People report spending hours inside, only to find they were gone minutes. Others are gone for what feels like seconds, only to discover a whole day has passed. It's as if time bends and twists along with the trees. Hoia Baciu has drawn researchers from around the world, parapsychologists, botanists, physicists. None of them can explain the anomalies. The energy readings fluctuate wildly. Magnetic fields spike without warning. Radiation levels change from one spot to another with no source. Some equipment refuses to work at all. And yet, the forest endures, silent, patient, and unknowable. And people still go. Tourists, ghost hunters, thrill seekers. Most come out, some don't. And a few return different. They speak less, sleep less. Some report having dreams of the forest long after leaving. One woman painted the clearing over and over in her sleep. Dozens of paintings, each more detailed than the last. She had only visited for an hour. Perhaps the scariest thing about Hoia Baciu isn't the trees or the whispers or the disappearances. It's the silence, the feeling that something is watching, waiting, judging. It's the realization that this place, this patch of land in the heart of Romania, is not just haunted. It's something older, something that doesn't care if you believe, something that doesn't need your fear but feeds on it anyway. So if you ever find yourself near Cluj-Napoca and feel a pull, a curiosity, you may be tempted to step into Hoia Baciu, just for a moment, just to see what the fuss is about. But remember, the forest sees you long before you see it. And once you step inside, you may not come out the same, if you come out at all. Because in Hoia Baciu, the question isn't whether you believe in ghosts or aliens or curses. The question is, what does the forest believe about you? Let me take you to a place where the walls breathe with the echoes of agony. A place where whispers still linger in the silence, and shadows seem to slither just out of view. A place that was once hailed as the future of modern justice, but quickly descended into something much darker, something twisted, something inhumane. Welcome to Eastern State Penitentiary, in the heart of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Built in 1829, this fortress of solitude was designed to reform criminals through isolation and penitence. But what started as a noble idea would quickly spiral into madness, torture, and death. And today, long after its last prisoner walked out, the walls of Eastern State remain, watching, listening, haunting. From the outside, it looks like a medieval castle. Massive stone walls, towering battlements, guard towers looming like sentinels of suffering. But inside is where the real story begins. Imagine a long, narrow corridor, metal doors on both sides. Each one leads to a tiny cell, just large enough for a bed, a Bible, and a sliver of light from a narrow skylight above. That was all they had. No contact, no visitors, no voices. Silence. The philosophy was simple. Prisoners were to reflect on their crimes in complete solitude. No distractions, no corruption from fellow inmates. Just them and their thoughts. And in theory, it should have worked. But here's the thing about solitary confinement. It doesn't cleanse the soul. It breaks the mind. Prisoners began to go insane. Some clawed at their own skin, believing insects were crawling underneath it. Others screamed through the walls for days on end. Some spoke to imaginary friends. Others forgot their own names. There was one man, locked in for robbery, who chewed off his fingers one by one, convinced they were cursed. Another carved, "I am the devil," into the wall with his teeth, before hanging himself with his bedsheet. And then there's cell block 12, the one that even the guards hated. Even today, that block feels different. Colder, heavier. Visitors report hearing whispers there. But not just any whispers. These are guttural, animalistic. Words that make no sense, yet feel somehow wrong. As if spoken not to be understood, but to be feared. Paranormal investigators have captured EVPs in cell block 12, evidence of disembodied voices calling out names or laughing. One recording, taken during a nighttime lockdown, simply repeats the phrase, "They watch you sleep." But it wasn't just the ghosts of insanity haunting Eastern State. No, the prison guards were their own kind of monster. Take the water bath, for instance. In winter, inmates were dunked into ice-cold water, then chained to the wall, naked, dripping while the air froze around them. Some froze to death, others went blind from hypothermia, or the mad chair, where prisoners were strapped down so tightly they couldn't move a single muscle. They'd stay there for days. No food, no water. Blood circulation would stop, limbs would go numb. Some never walked again. And then there was the iron gag, a barbaric device attached to the prisoner's tongue, linked to their wrists behind their back. If they moved just slightly, the gag would rip their tongue out. It didn't just silence them. It mutilated them. There are no accurate records of how many prisoners died in that chair, but even one is too many. But the dead didn't stay quiet. Even in the 1800s, rumors spread of strange happenings inside the prison walls. Guards spoke of shadows moving where no shadows should be. They reported hearing footsteps pacing the hallways at night, long after the inmates had been locked away. Some said they saw glowing eyes staring through the food slots. Others said they heard weeping, deep, mournful weeping coming from empty cells. And then came Al Capone. Yes, the Al Capone. When he was finally caught for tax evasion, he was locked inside Eastern State's most luxurious cell. Rug, mirror, lamp, furniture. But even the comforts of wealth couldn't protect him from what lurked in those halls. Capone claimed he was haunted. Haunted by the ghost of James Clark, one of the victims of the St. Valentine's Day massacre, orchestrated by Capone himself. He would scream at night, begging for forgiveness, shouting at shadows. Guards dismissed it at first. But the screaming never stopped. Capone said the ghost wouldn't leave him alone. And even after he was released, he spoke of being followed, stalked, hunted by the dead. The prison officially closed in 1971. After nearly 150 years of misery, it was finally left to rot. But the spirits, they never left. In the years that followed, paranormal investigators, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers flocked to Eastern State. What they found was beyond disturbing. One team entered the abandoned cell block 4. As they passed one of the cells, their camera picked up a figure, pale, humanoid, crawling on all fours. It moved fast, unnaturally fast. By the time they turned, it was gone. They checked the footage. It was real, and worse, it was following them. A group of historians once spent the night inside to document the prison's architecture. One man, a skeptical engineer, mocked the stories. "Ghosts don't exist," he laughed, standing beneath a crumbling arch. 2 minutes later, his camera was torn from his hand, flung 20 feet across the cell block. No one was near him. The footage showed nothing. But the audio picked up a single word: believe. And then there are the shadow figures. Hundreds of reports. Shadows darting across walls, figures standing in corners, a man-shaped form with no face seen walking through walls. Guests faint, some vomit. Others claim their clothes are tugged. Their names whispered. One woman collapsed near the rotunda. When she came to, she said she had seen herself, aged, bloody, chained to a wall. A warning? A vision? No one knows. But perhaps the most chilling story of all is the caretaker's tale. In the late 80s, when restoration began, a man named Gary Johnson was working to lock up the old cells. It was late. He was alone. Or so he thought. He entered one of the oldest blocks to secure a rusted door when suddenly, he couldn't move. He said it felt like a hand had grabbed his arm. Then another on his neck. He couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. Then, in an instant, it was gone. Shaken, he looked around. The cell was empty, but as he turned to leave, he saw faces, hundreds of them, etched into the stone. Faces he swore hadn't been there before, screaming, crying, mouths open in eternal torment. He quit that same week. To this day, he refuses to speak of it. Eastern State has been featured in every major ghost hunting show you can name. Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, Most Haunted. Every team leaves with footage, audio, evidence of something wrong. But even they admit they've barely scratched the surface. There's something about the structure itself. Maybe it's the radial design. 7 cell blocks fanning out from a central hub like the spokes of a wheel. Maybe it's the endless corridors, the tiny doors, the haunting echoes. Or maybe it's the energy, that heavy electric feeling that something is watching you, waiting. That moment when the air shifts, and you know you're not alone. Because Eastern State Penitentiary isn't just haunted by the past. It is the past. Every brick, every cell, every echo in the hallway carries the weight of over a century of suffering. Men died here, men went mad here, and some never left. Their spirits remain, bound to the very place that broke them. And here's the thing. The prison still opens its doors every October for public tours and haunted attractions. Thousands pour in, laughing, drinking, snapping selfies in the shadow of horror. But not all of them leave the same. Some experience the shift, some feel the cold, and some never talk about it. Because there's a moment, a single moment, where the fun stops, where the laughter dies, and the realization creeps in. This isn't just theatrics, this isn't just props and actors, this is a place that remembers, place that grieves, a place that wants you to stay. So the next time you hear someone say, "Let's visit Eastern State, it'll be fun," just ask yourself, what happens when the door closes behind you? When the lights go out? When you're left alone in a prison that's been feeding off fear for nearly 200 years? And if you hear a whisper in the dark, it's already too late. If your heart is racing right now, good. That means you're alive. But the story isn't over yet. And the deeper we go, the darker it becomes. Hit subscribe now so you won't miss what waits beyond this point. Because the real horror, it's only just beginning. The Capuchin Catacombs in Palermo. The name alone sends chills through the spine. A place where death refuses to rest, where the silent residents stand before you, unblinking, forever watching. Hundreds of years ago, the Capuchin friars began a tradition, preserving their dead in death's grip and lining the walls of these catacombs with them. But this was no act of reverence. This was a theater of horror, a showcase of mortality frozen in time, where fear and fascination collide. With each breathless heartbeat, step inside, and the first thing you see is a lineup of corpses in elaborate formal wear, men in suits, women in gowns, children in their Sunday best. They stand or sit along narrow corridors that stretch into darkness. Their eyes, where sockets should be, stare emptily at you. Some are bright-eyed, eyes surgically preserved, others are sunken and shadowed. A young girl, preserved in lace and innocence, still clutches a rosary. A nobleman stands posed like a statue, his skin a pale hue of eerie manifestation. But their presence is neither peaceful nor serene. It is unsettling, uncanny. Living flesh you can't breathe near. Death that begs your attention and invites your dread. The catacombs are not merely halls of the dead, they are a perverse museum of decay. Entire families line up in death, their bodies arranged in queues, as if still alive, waiting their turn. A child, dead in life's infancy, lies in a glass coffin, its face defiant, unyielding. A baby, rocking in a cradle, never to rise again. A baby in a cradle, forever entrapped in time. In the 17th century, families began requesting to have their dead displayed, dressed, elevated, arranged. Over time, it became both fashion and a morbid statement. But nearly always, they weren't dressed for prayer, they were dressed as if for a life going on, a life that, for them, had stopped. And there are rumors, tales of visitors drawn to forbidden corners, where corpses move when unobserved, where a child's muffled sob echoes behind your ears, where you feel a breath on your neck, but turn, and no one is there. A curious scholar once visited at midnight, not with lantern, but with a camera's flash. He photographed a procession of monks passing through the corridor. Only on the film were faces, ghastly and pale, trailing behind them. He claimed he saw them with his eyes, too, shrouded figures behind the glass enclosures. Figures so faint they seemed teleporting through flesh and space. The only imprint they were certain of was spectral. Then there's the story of the caretaker, a nun, who closed the gates one night. She heard the hinge squeak and a whisper, a soft, childlike voice calling for her. Suor, aiuto, sister, help. Slowly, she turned, candle in hand. Standing before her was a girl, maybe 10 years old, clothed in tattered lace, pale beyond death. She reached for the nun, mouth formed for speech, but no sound came out. The nun fled. When she returned with backup, the girl was gone. No trace, only condensation on the glass, only a broken button at her feet. Not far from there lies Sister Maria, preserved in her habit, eyes wide open as if caught mid-prayer. But local legend says that at midnight, devout visitors sometimes glimpse, through inhuman clarity, a flicker of movement in her pupils. As if she's praying still, watching still, caught in eternal vigil. One night, investigators placed an infrared camera in the women's gallery. They captured a shadow, slim, human in form, drifting past a row of bodies, gliding like smoke. No heat signature, no presence. Just a dark wave passing in the cold gloom. But perhaps the most haunting tales come from those who linger too long. A visitor, overcome with macabre curiosity, leaned in close to inspect a body's face. When he straightened back up, his reflection in the glass showed a face that wasn't his. Hollowed eyes, grayed skin, sealed lips. He bolted. His reflection stayed behind. Yet there are moments of unbearable whispers, too. It's said that during particularly quiet hours, that hush when you're sure the air is holding its breath, you'll hear the tapping of knuckles on glass. Slow, insistent, rhythmic, a silent plea. Tap, tap, tap. Asking to be remembered, asking to be freed, or asking or warning you to leave. The catacombs were closed briefly during WE2 when bombs threatened collapse. They were protected, and still some of those entombed rose slightly from their niches. Not physically moved, just leveled slightly, as if invisible hands disturbed them. No structural damage accounts for it, just reports from workers who swore a deafening silence followed them out. In the early 2000s, radiography studies were done, hoping to learn more about preservation. When the X-ray equipment was turned on, it shorted and sparked as if through a fault. Only the deathly forms remained unaffected. Because they're not flesh still. They're something else. What makes the Capuchin catacombs creep into your bones is not just the sight of death, but the feeling that somehow they're still alive, like bodies uttering silent accusation. Ghosts of lives still woven into the cloth, the dresses, the shoes, the rosaries, the stairs. Their eyes claim your gaze, their presence swallows your breath and slows your heartbeat to a whisper. And so, every visitor, every pilgrim into death's domain emerges changed, less certain of what death is. More certain that life's door did not close there, but maybe, just maybe, swung open in a new shape. Some leave and never speak again. Some carry nightmares of texture, skin stretched too thin, eyelids cracking, skeletal grins. Others paint their memories, abstract smears of white lace, darkness, and eyes. Now, as you walk the dim hallways of your mind, the corridors of this script, you can almost feel the chill, the brush of fabric, the breath of the dead. They're not gone. They've just paused. And they might be watching still. Because in the Capuchin catacombs, death is not an end. It's a gallery. If your heart is racing right now, good. That means you're alive. But the story isn't over yet. And the deeper we go, the darker it becomes. Hit subscribe now so you won't miss what waits beyond this point. Because the real horror, it's only just beginning. They say that some places never sleep, that long after the lights flicker off and the last guest drifts into dreamless slumber, the air still trembles with echoes of whispers, footsteps, piano keys. There is such a place perched on the edge of Rocky Mountain National Park, nestled in the heart of Colorado. A grand colonial revival structure with windows like watchful eyes, corridors that stretch into shadow, and a legacy soaked in history, horror, and haunted memory. This is the Stanley Hotel, the inspiration for The Shining, but tonight, it stands on its own, breathing cold air into your bones. It all began with Freeland Oscar Stanley, a man who beat tuberculosis and decided to beat boredom too. In 1909, he built this mountain resort as a health retreat and unwittingly created a stage for spectral drama. With its 140 rooms and concert hall, it catered to high society. But as the decades rolled on, the lull of luxury faded, and something darker came alive. Decades later, Stephen King would arrive here, stranded by a snowstorm and the prospect of a closing hotel. He stayed in room 217, alone with its long shadows and silent halls. That night, he dreamed of his child being chased by a fire hose. He woke, lit a cigarette, and by dawn, he had the bones of his book. Room 217 is no longer just a shrine. It's a living haunt. Guests speak of clothing folded neatly as if by invisible hands. Lights flicker inexplicably, and unmarried couples sometimes awaken to find a cold force between them. The ghost of Elizabeth Wilson, the maid who survived a deadly gas explosion there in 1911. She survived, and now, in a tragic echo, she continues to tend the room, tidy the beds, enforce Victorian decorum. But the hotel's haunting doesn't end there. The fourth floor, once a nursery for nannies and children, is alive with childhood echoes. Guests report laughter, hurried footsteps, even lights flickering when no one is there. In room 418, hangers shift on their own. Cots are rifled through. The night. A 4-year-old girl told her mother she was tickled at midnight by an invisible boy, but when she asked him to stop, he vanished. Perhaps this is where King's eerie twins were born, shadows playing in a hallway, forever repeating what was never their play to leave. Elsewhere, a cowboy watches. In room 428, a figure in Western garb stands at the bed's edge, just silently, watching. Women claim they've felt a gentle, ghostly kiss on their foreheads. No one knows his true story, but his demeanor is polite, respectful, a gentler echo in hushed darkness. There's room 401, where a male presence dwells. A guest woke to find the closet door open, despite locking it tight. He felt watched. On the counter, his wedding ring slid off and disappeared down the drain. A too polite presence? Or something far older? Meanwhile, room 407 carries a kinder touch. Some say a spirit tucks you in at night. Lights switch off only to flick on again at dawn. A face appears at the window, framed in dark glass, but when you enter, you find only the empty room and 2 wide, empty eyes in the mirror. The concert hall is a stage for the unseen. Guests hear a woman playing the piano when none sits on the bench. Flora Stanley, the founder's wife, once a patron of music, is heard there, her ghostly fingers dancing across the ivory keys. Paul, a former caretaker, enforces the 11 p.m. curfew from beyond the grave. Late-night visitors report hearing a stern "Get out!" echo through the rafters. In the same hall, Lucy, a homeless soul who once sought refuge, answers questions with flashlights and knocks. One investigation caught her in a basement photo. A small girl in pink, pale as porcelain, her eyes wide and unblinking. Then there's the grand staircase, dubbed the Vortex, a spiral of energy that detects the unseen and the unquiet. Visitors often catch a glimpse, through photographs, of a woman in black standing at the staircase's crest. She's always there, almost waiting. I could tell you the stories of slamming doors, flickering orbs, and objects moving with stubborn defiance. I could mention the Redditor who felt their hair pulled in an empty hallway, or the stranger who felt footsteps behind them on the stone stairs when they were alone, or the camera that picked up a tall, pirate-like figure lurking in a hallway. Photo. Behind an unsuspecting woman. But the real terror isn't in the stories. It's in the experience. That moment when the lights cut out on the 4th floor and you hear giggles in the walls, right behind your skin. Guests don't just visit. Some stay with trepidation, others run. One man shot up the stairs, half naked, after working on the filming of Dumb and Dumber here. A friend who lived nearby jogged up the stairs to his wedding night, only to find the groom injured by a sudden fall, one that could not be explained by misstep. Now the Stanley embraces its spectral legacy. Ghost tours swirl through its corridors, and basements, and every Halloween, its halls become over-nightmare. An immersive horror experience that bends the line between real dread and showmanship. A hedge maze inspired by the shining winds across the lawn. They even play the film on loop in guest room TVs just in case you forget where this horror started. But here's what truly haunts. The hotel's ghosts are woven into the very fabric. of the place, from polished wood to echoing corridors, from ivory keys to empty beds. They are not nightmares. They're a presence, waiting. So when someone dares you to stay a night here, to book room 217, to walk the fourth floor after curfew, just ask yourself, at what point do you tip from curiosity into desperation? And if you feel a 2-year-old, hand tug your blanket as you drift off, or hear a jangling lullaby play from the empty ballroom, you might wake with the bones of another story.
Subscribe before the shadows notice you're still here.
They call it the Castle of the Rockies, and for good reason. The Banff Springs Hotel rises from the Canadian mountains like a fortress of dreams, a grand chateau-style palace crowned by snow and framed by the peaks of Banff National Park. But beneath its storied elegance and cozy fireplaces lies something far more intriguing, a darkness, a presence, a history that refuses to sleep. At first glance, it looks inviting. Built in 1888 by the Canadian Pacific Railway, conceived as a haven where luxurious escapes meet alpine majesty, designed by Bruce Price, later expanded under Walter Painter in 1914, and more elegantly enlarged by John Orrock in the 1920s. Its walls made from iconic Rundle limestone, a regal facade that hides whispered secrets and ghostly stories that still bleed through. Step inside, and you still feel them. The air shifts as you pass the entrance doors. The hallways curve into darkness. The floors, polished terrazzo, oak-paneled corridors, ornate tapestry, forever echo with something unseen. Something not quite warm. Something watching. And then you. Remember the stories. The first, the one the Canadians honored with a stamp and coin, the Ghost Bride. It is said that in the 1920s, a young bride, terrified, radiant, overwhelmed with excitement, stood at the top of the grand marble staircase, preparing to make her entrance into a lifetime. But it never happened. In some tales, her dress brushed against a burning candle and burst into flames. In others, she slipped on the stairs. Either way, she fell. She died. And the night ended in tragedy. Guests still report glimpsing her. At night, a veiled figure glides downward, descending the stone stairwell. Others feel her dancing in the Cascade Ballroom, white gown swaying, but alone, sorrowful. Some even smell faint smoke when no fire burns. It's as if her spirit cannot descend or live the life she was denied. Next, there's Sam the bellman, the hotel's most beloved resident, even in death. Sam Macaulay tended guests in the 1960s and 70s. He was a Scottish bellman. He died around 1975. Soon after, guests began seeing an elderly bellman in period uniform. Always helpful, assisting. Guests with luggage, with advice, with lighting a room. Then he would vanish. One story, 2 women calling for help thought a bellman was helping them, but the bell desk reported no one responded. And yet, there he was. Sam, wearing that old plaid uniform. Other times, elevators open and close, on their own. Lights flicker where he used to stand. To some, he's a friendly keeper who refuses to clock out. Ghost hunters have picked up something physical too. Tools shudder. Room keys slide helplessly off desks. Yet, temperature plummets, or sometimes there's that signature warm presence of unseen service. But there's still more. Room 873, or rather the room that doesn't exist and the room that does. Legend claims it was the site of a horrific murder-suicide. A family, father, mother, child, violently torn apart by a drunk patriarch, all perish inside. Accounts say the room was quickly sealed and strange activity followed. Guests heard screaming, felt eyes on them, and saw bloody handprints appear on bathroom mirrors. Eventually, the admin deleted the room from records. It became part of room 875 with walls plastered over. No one knows why exactly, but the stories persist. Workers claim if you knock where the door used to be, it feels hollow. Some report laughter and music in the sealed-off hallway behind a board, a phantom party where no guests exist. Another tale, staff look down the fourth-floor hallway and find themselves on the tab for room 13. The elevator clicks to 10, 11, 12, then opens on 13. But there is no 13th floor physically. Guests swear they saw a door, a whisper, an echo. Just another example of how reality bends here. Beyond the rooms and corridors, other spirits roam too. A phantom cook or gentleman, well-dressed, seen in the restaurant or basement. Patrons smell strong tobacco. He might be a construction worker who fell during the hotel's build. Marked by habits of years past, he lingers along lanes of warmth and steam, chain-smoking into the marble corners. A tragic staff wife murdered by her husband is said to haunt the upper levels, knocking, footsteps on empty balconies, doors slamming. Her spirit dwelling where violence ended her life, her presence mournful yet furious. Investigators didn't just take tales, they collected evidence. A paranormal duo took photos showing orbs, temperature drops, electromagnetic spikes. One, 1990s. Investigation captured shapes in photos, cloudy, glowing, inexplicable. One appears to show a bellman-like figure trapped in the still frame. Employees confirm odd happenings too. A housekeeper once felt something playing with her feet as she slept. A waiter reported chairs moving in the dining room on their own. Security wrote of hearing footsteps in empty tunnels. A guard took a photo of a ghostly child's reflection in a window pane, hair pale, eyes bright with sorrow, alone in the night. 1. Tour guide, half skeptic, half enthralled, recounts the double doors closing after a guest inside, moved with no visible force. He asked quietly, "Sam?" And yes, that same stillness, that feel, settled in that moment. The Banff Springs isn't just a collection of hallways and legends, it's a living memory. The building itself is a ghost, a vast structure holding centuries of loss, anticipation, violence, service, heartbreak, and promise. Every limestone block whispers. When the wind outside howls, those whispers come alive, cold, polished, patient. Guests who stay overnight often emerge changed. One walked out pale, mumbling about the bride's sobs. Another left with a photo that curled his hair, captured light flickered as though breathing. Some refused to visit alone. Others frame their photos of Sam on their home walls. They can't stop looking at him. Is it real? Or just a great story, made even stronger by our need to believe? Skeptics deny historical record of the bride, or even murders at all. But staff admit, yes, they tell the stories as much for ambiance as for proof. Yet, some events, the doors swinging, the lights flicking, the laughter echoing, aren't in any brochure. Those happen. So here's the promise. If you stand alone in the Cascade Ballroom, always listen for the piano, especially the 1 o'clock ghost performance, because others have heard a waltz begin after midnight with no pianist in sight. If you ride the elevator and it stops at 13, know that the walls understand more than they let on. If you feel a helpful tap on your shoulder, a whisper prompting you down a corridor, it may just be that loyal Scotsman Sam still on the job. And if at the top of those marble stairs you freeze, there is a chance you may feel a brush of lace, a chill of regret, and a piece of unfinished love still descending from her sorrow, because here in the castle of the Rockies, history never turns its back, and sometimes neither do the dead. Helltown, Ohio, once an ordinary village in Summit County, now exists as a realm stitched together by whispers, shadows, and the scars left by forced departures. The government's abrupt acquisition of the land in the 1970s sent residents fleeing, abandoning homes, churches, barns, and streets, leaving a physical void and a legend born of that absence. Is this forgotten place a cursed crossroads, haunted by what once was, or is it a phantom constructed by rumor and time? Let's walk through the mist. Most of the vanished town lies within what became Cuyahoga Valley National Park. As families packed their lives, some hastily left belongings behind. Boarded homes bore "No trespassing" signs, and a message scrawled in one window read, "Now we know how the Indians felt." But only demolition crews and decay marked the departure. The landscape devolved into whispers, and narratives sprouted from silence. Now the town stands as a ghost of itself. The barn remains, sturdy and solid enough to explore, but most structures are gone. The church, the old school buildings, the dusty lanes, all either torn down or reclaimed by forest, yet the stories refuse to fade. One legend centers on the Presbyterian Church, with its Gothic Revival architecture and inverted crosses. Local thrill seekers claimed satanic rituals and sacrifices took place within. In reality, the crosses were merely a stylistic choice. Yet, rumor trumps reason in places swallowed by shadow. Another chilling artifact, the abandoned school bus left rusting in the woods. Legend says a serial killer slaughtered the children inside. Some claim you can peer through the fogged windows at ghostly faces. In truth, a family once lived in that bus while waiting for home repairs. But reality did little to stop the specters of myth. Then there is the Peninsula Python, a mutant snake born of chemical contamination. The nearby Krejci dump became a Superfund site after rangers suffered rashes and eye strain. Tales spun of an enormous serpent, 19 feet long, lurking in the woods, spawned by toxic fallout. Local legend grows thicker each year, even as cleanup efforts moved forward. Peninsula hosts a Python Day parade in its honor, celebrating the myth, tongue firmly in cheek. The Crybaby Bridge adds another layer of dread. At night, visitors say, a mother's wails echo across the stile, and cars return smeared with tiny handprints. Some even report engines left running after return. It's a classic Crybaby Bridge tale, but in Helltown it feels plausibly malevolent. Then there's Stanford Road, known ominously as the end of the world or highway to hell. A steep cliff at one end gives the illusion of driving off an abyss. Locals say the road itself is cursed. Abandoning your car there is not safe. It becomes possessed. Ending drives on this haunted incline is worse than dangerous. It is legendary. Across the cemetery, known as Boston Cemetery or Mother of Sorrows, ghosts linger. One legend tells of a man eternally seated, waiting for his family. Others say only the dead remained in this abandoned ghost town, sitting and sobbing. Graves seem to bear faces that glow when rain falls, or when moonlight catches a marble name. There are more tales, slaughterhouses, funeral barns, places where whispered shadows flank rusty windows. Some say if you peer inside, ghostly faces gasp for air. Others mention occult gatherings held in the old barns, where fog and secrecy cloak rituals. Perhaps the most sinister legends involve hearses, mutants, wendigos, and military conspiracies. One story tells of a ghostly hearse with one headlight chasing trespassers down the road. Others speak of government bunkers hidden beneath the woods, marked by tribal Wendigo symbols and cult apparitions. All these stories converge at the barn, one of the few structures still standing. Some explorers report EVP recordings of footsteps and voices when no one else is present. One crew heard walking, voices, and recordings inside an empty stall with no human nearby. Visitors share accounts of being followed by flashlight lights in the distance, only to find no trace of other humans. Trees bend in unnatural shapes. Forest. Silence breaks without warning, and animals avoid certain paths. Paranormal investigators have claimed battery drainage, camera malfunctions, and sudden nausea. EVP sessions reveal fragmented whispers, names of those never spoken aloud, and calls to "get out" repeated like a desperate chant. Locals in surrounding areas have long said that Helltown was closed off for reasons darker than National Park. Development. One of the most widely spread rumors involves chemical spills and government quarantine. Supposedly, an unknown contagion spread across the town, prompting immediate evacuation. The idea is bolstered by roadblocks that remained up for months, unusual for a simple land reclamation. Witnesses claimed they saw CDC vans and military presence, hazmat suits entering boarded houses, and black helicopters circling at night. But official records remain silent on such claims. Among the most terrifying Helltown legends is the belief that people who visit alone are more likely to vanish. Some stories tell of explorers who never returned. Others say they came back changed, mute, disturbed, or unrecognizable in their behavior. One case tells of a local teen who went into the forest with a camera and a group of friends. The camera was later found in a ditch. The footage showed the boy breaking from the group to chase something unseen, only to scream, "It's not a person!" before the camera cut out. He was found wandering 10 miles away, barefoot and silent, unable to explain what happened. It's easy to dismiss these stories as urban legends, built from the eerie backdrop of a town frozen in decay. But the feeling, the atmosphere of Helltown doesn't lie. Even skeptics speak of the weight that presses down upon you when walking its trails. Some describe the silence as too loud. The air feels heavy, the shadows deeper, and the sense of being watched is more than psychological. At night, the roads twist unnaturally. People have driven in loops, their GPS malfunctioning, only to end up where they started. Time feels inconsistent. One couple claimed they drove through the area for 20 minutes, yet when they checked their dash cam footage, 2 hours had passed, the in-between moments simply gone. Helltown's very name contributes to its ominous identity. It was never officially called Helltown, of course. That's the invention of locals, thrill-seekers, and storytellers. But once it stuck, it turned the landscape from abandoned town into American legend. The name itself carries a weight that draws in the curious, the daring, and the unlucky. Some paranormal researchers say Helltown isn't haunted by spirits, but rather by energy, residual trauma, displacement, and the lingering emotions of people forced from their homes. They describe it as a psychic wound in the earth, a tear between dimensions. Others believe it is a thin place, a point where the boundary between our world and another is dangerously fragile. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, something about Helltown resists peace. Perhaps it's the way the forest slowly reclaims what was stolen from it. Or maybe it's the whispered names, the flickering lights, the childlike laughter in the distance, all impossible to record or explain. So what really happened in Helltown? Was it just a town caught in the path of government expansion? Or was it a place touched by something much darker? Something that refuses to leave or to be left alone? Visitors continue to arrive, ignoring the signs, chasing legends. Some seek the thrill of the unknown. Others come looking for proof. But everyone who walks the paths of Helltown walks away changed. Even if they say nothing, their silence echoes louder than any scream. And some never walk away at all. If you've watched all the way to the end, congratulations. That means the shadows didn't scare you away. But don't get too comfortable. They'll be waiting when you come back. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, and save it so you can return to the darkness anytime you want.